Hi guys, Zuki from Gatsko Gaming here. I thought we would just go through the new event, but more specifically the new hero and see how he stacks up. Quite a few people have asked me to share some reports that I have on this hero, so I thought this is a good way to do that and show you guys the stats, etc. that come with it. So this is the event. It's a collaboration with Evangelion. Hope I pronounced that okay. We know for sure that there is one new hero that's already been announced. His name is Shinji, and there is another hero that's coming later on in the crossover. So you can get the new hero if you go into this new section here, and we go to either the Lucky Treasury and we pay for him with gems, or we can flat out buy him with cash like you can normally. The other new hero hasn't been released just yet, but I imagine would be fairly similar. As you can see, I have already upgraded my hero to 100. In fact, I have maxed the hero out and got his exclusive to level 5. So this is our hero here. He's specified as an army hero, but actually, if we look at him, none of his stats suggest he is purely army. So his positron cannon skill gives all of your units a indestructible buff, which is similar to Prime, which we'll cover later on. The indestructibility wears off in the second round, again, like Prime. After your unit launches a regular attack, there is a chance that he will release 3 missiles, which will do damage. And your units will get this strike effect, which boosts the missile damage after each round. So if we remember, a round is once all units have taken their actions. So what it's saying is if you trigger his skill in round 1, when you get through to round 2, then the missiles will do more damage. And that happens for 2 rounds and then wears off. Now, importantly, his exclusive, the level 5, is what you are really looking for. The indestructible buff is increased by 1 round. So the big difference between Shinji and Prime is that the damage reduction will last another round, which is a big deal because you're still doing damage with his other part of his main skill at that time. In fact, you're doing more damage each round because of the strike effect, which also lasts 1 more round as well. If we go back to the skill description, as I said before, there's no mention of army or navy or any type of unit. All units get the strike effect, all units get the indestructible effect. Even his level 3 attribute increases the attack of all units, and so I class him as an all unit hero. And you can see I've put him on my air with full perks. So what people want to see is reports, and I've got a couple of demonstrations here for some testing that I've done. So if we go to Dark Forces tab, I did a bit of testing on Dark Forces. Now, what we're looking at is how much damage we take if we use Shinji versus Prime, because that's the big trade-off if you're an air user. So I did tests where we have max level Prime with no exclusive and max level Prime with level 5, and the same for Shinji, and we can compare the two. So to start with, this is a battle where we are just attacking a level 80 Dark Army. Our components don't include high rate of fire, and we put the unit at the back so that we get hit 3 times at least to make sure we get a good reading of how much damage we take. And you can see here, 217 million is how much damage we take without any heroes. That means no indestructible buff. I'll put the numbers on the screen as well at the end, so we can compare them all and go through them. This is just a very quick overview of how this works. So here we're using Prime, and we're not using any abilities, no exclusive. So just Prime on his own, no skills. How much damage do we take? Remember, it was 217 million, and now it's down to 116 million. And if we compare that with Shinji, who I'll show you the one where we don't have his skill equipped. So he has no exclusive, 217 down to 136. And that lines up with the skill abilities. So we can see that when we look at Prime, he gets 46.4% indestructible for me because I have a DEF, which increases the stat here. 46.4 versus Shinji, he only has 37. So you can tell you get a slightly less damage reduction. If we go back and look at the versions where we are using the exclusive, so for this report, we have level 5 exclusive. Remember before we were on 127, I believe. It's now down to 119. So 217 to 119. And if we look at primes, and confirm again, level 5 skill, he goes down to 95.4. So I'll put that in a box on the screen now so you can see. So the trade-off here, if we're using Shinji for our air instead of Prime, is slightly less damage reduction in the first round by a certain percentage, which I'll calculate and put on the screen. But in return, we're getting the ability to submit some missiles which do a relatively smaller number of damage, only 75% damage times 3, which increases every round. And it does noticeably increase, as you can see in some of our replays. So let's step through to some replays. I've changed my Warzone exercise defense to be Shinji with Max and Selena. Obviously, we have our heavy trooper in the middle. He helps to protect the max row, and we're seeing some pretty good results coming out of this. So here's one. I haven't looked at this yet. If we take a look just purely at the top level, the number of procs for Maximo was the same. But if I had to guess, it looks like his came a lot later than mine because mine did a lot more damage than his. Let's have a look at the stats. We have about the same stats in terms of the exclusives. We both have level 5s only. His trooper has a much higher attack speed than mine. Mine only has 1%, so he's definitely going to fire first. And in terms of our actual stats, I obviously have quite a big advantage here in the damage increase and attack stats, so I imagine I will be doing more damage. So we take a quick look at the replay. He's put his heavy trooper in exactly the same position, which makes sense. And what's probably happened is, oh, he has triggered laser shot on his first round, which is interesting. But it actually, unfortunately, hit my heavy trooper. Now, the heavy trooper, even if it's damaged, will still do full damage to him. So you can see there that I managed to hit a stack of his planes, which didn't have a trooper in. He hit the trooper, and that means that I kind of won that exchange at the beginning. So here's the first proc we have of positron cannon. Unfortunately, it's procking on a 5 out of 25 stack. Only did about 5 billion damage. So here, unfortunately, he procs the laser again on the heavy trooper stack. And we managed to proc it on his heavy trooper. with a crit as well. Oh, my heavy trooper is just taking a ton of damage here, and he's procced his invincibility, which is great. So what we're going to see now is actually the benefit of having Shinji on your air in the second round. So I got away with it very lightly there with my max row being completely undamaged from a point of view of how much damage I've taken. Wow, he one-shot almost that that whole stack of planes. Interesting. But there again, see, we managed to proc on our heavy trooper. Our laser completely destroyed the whole column. And did that battle finish with him still having a unit alive? Interesting. Must have just been a glitch visually. So if we slow it down and we go back to some key points of this, we can really see the parts of the battle which mattered. So let's watch it back again and pay attention to how much damage each laser is taking off of each of our characters. So his heavy trooper fires first, and he does proc his max laser. So he's doing 1.58 T to the heavy trooper there, 1.58 trillion. And we do proc again on the way back to his second row. And it's important we look at the second row because the front row obviously has max's damage reduction, so 1.69. So there's a little difference there. I think that's probably because of our attack stat, as we mentioned, with the damage increase. But it also is his Prime versus Shinji as well. So even though he has Prime, which has better Indestructible, he still took more damage because we have slightly more attack. So let's fast forward to the second round now, because that's where we see the big difference in how Prime works versus how Shinji will be working. Now, actually, his heavy trooper almost one-shot our left-hand side there with his ability in the second round. But that was quite a lucky blow, and I'd say that Shinji's is much more reliable in that you always get it in the second round as this damage reduction. So let's see that come through now. So here is his heavy trooper again. He's going to fire, and we still have our buff. We can see the shield is there, and he's firing the cannon and doing a hell of a lot of damage, 2.29, because his heavy trooper did it. And again, 1.56 there from the heavy trooper. Now that's going to be higher than against our heavy trooper because our heavy trooper also has some damage decrease. Now you see that 4.96 trillion is how much our max laser did to his planes in the second round. And that's compared to 1.6 trillion the first round. So that difference in damage there is really big compared to the first round. It's over twice the damage we did, but the damage he did to us is the same. And most of these air battles, you'll see they always finish by round 2. This is an interesting battle again that we had. This guy is very, very strong. He uses Prime. He is currently running as a mech, but if we look at his stats, he's got some level 8 and level 7 rare skills. He's got level 7 for every exclusive, and his actual overall stats are better than mine. The only thing that seems to be worse is his march size, because he's a mechanical master. So you can see he has a higher attack bonus than me, higher damage increase and decrease, and way more HP. So if we look at the replay, it's actually quite interesting. It looks like we're going to lose here. Now, importantly, this time we're attacking, not defending. You can see the increase on the health difference between the heavy troopers as well. So I get to go first. because he doesn't have attack speed on his heavy trooper. So we take a huge amount of damage there, even with the indestructible buff, and he takes less because we don't have as high attack damage as him, and his prime has better reduction due to level 7. So positron cannon here does very little, 153 billion, and I think they actually have more HP than that anyway, so we do less than a single unit. So here we get lasered again, and it's not looking good. We do positron cannon. But we don't get a max proc, which is quite important. So now he's had another max proc, and his middle row is looking a lot better than our middle row. But let's see what happens in round 2. It's very interesting, and it highlights the difference between Shinji and Prime quite well, I think. So we go back to us on our first attack, and you see first attack doesn't do very much, but we get a laser shot. And now if we watch his middle row, he has now not got indestructible buff anymore because Prime has run out, but we still have ours. Critical hit for 3 trillion in his heavy trooper there, just from the positron shot. So that's his strike bonus that came from the exclusive skill, and a lucky crit from the heavy trooper, which then ended up, along with Maximo's burn, one-shotting essentially the heavy trooper there. And now, of course, the tables have completely turned. We still have our heavy trooper, we still have indestructible, and we have more planes in the max row. So it's looking good for us here. Positron goes off again. It's doing more damage this time, 394 billion, which is, almost 2 planes now instead of 1, because again, the indestructible buff has disappeared. His shots from his prime howitzer cannon do less to us because we still have our buff. And my heavy trooper's still alive, so we're looking in good shape. And the battle kind of plays out from there. You can kind of see what happens. The heavy trooper doesn't get hit very much, so it keeps this indestructible shield for when it needs it, and it just cleans up with a laser at the end. So we look at the damage done by Shinji there. That crit and the second round damage really increased, and we did 14 trillion just from the positron cannon, whereas our max did roughly the same amount of damage as his, and we snuck out there with the win against a much bigger, better opponent. We'll do one more just to look at to see maybe where we fell short. So this is another attack we did against someone that has prime. From looking at the offset, you might be able to assume it's just because of max. Let's take a look. 2 triggers to 5 is not a good start. So here his trooper goes first and lasers, which doesn't one-shot us, but does a lot of damage here. Our heavy trooper got pulse jammed, and then we didn't proc max, so that's a big loss for us in the first round there as well. So we get positron cannon coming off of this round, which means we activate our strike for next round, which is good. But by then it might be all she wrote. With no more max again. Now, because the way he's lined up his ones, he actually gets his max to trigger before ours, and he takes out that whole last column. So we haven't had a single max proc yet, and he's had 2. So now the second round comes, and this is where he loses his buff and we keep ours. So hopefully we can get a trigger here for max. We do. It should take a whole stack. It does. Then his one triggers. Again, he gets a laser again. But he hits our heavy trooper, which should then trigger our indestructible, which it does. So if we manage to get max proc on this, we may be looking okay. Let's have a look. So max does trigger. Unfortunately, his heavy trooper dodges, and then I think this stack probably triggers the laser as well. Yeah, on our planes, and that's how we lose. Not much we can do there. I don't think Prime would help. Based on the max procs. And unfortunately, our heavy trooper dies to the flame damage from max as well, which means that there's no chance of a comeback. Now, Max may have let the heavy trooper, sorry, Prime may have let the heavy trooper stay alive there for that final round, but the positron cannon wouldn't be available for him. And in the second round, he actually would have lost his indestructible buff as well. I said just one more, but we'll do another one. So this is Serval. This character is the last air hero that came out before Shinji came out. This person here has a level 7 Selena, but level 5 everything else. I think they have less attack speed than me, so we should be going first again. But our stats are very similar. They have more damage increase and decrease, but slightly worse HP and attack. So bear in mind, they don't have indestructible debuff at all. So let's see where the damage comes from, because our max doesn't do as much as theirs on a per hit basis. So our heavy trooper goes straight away, manages to one-shot an entire column. And interesting there, even with heavy trooper, even with Shinji's indestructible, our mid row basically gets one shot, because as soon as it becomes that turn, it's going to die. And that's because Serval does increase the damage of the back 2 rows there. So it looks like all the damage from this person came from his heavy trooper basically getting max lasers on the 2 columns that he needed to. So he's going to do another one, probably wipe out the left hand side. Okay, he wipes out the heavy trooper there. He gets a trigger on Serval, which probably does very little because it's only one shot from heavy trooper there. We get a positron cannon, 378 billion, which isn't a bad amount actually. And then we max laser to finish off. So that could have changed actually, if that positron cannon hadn't gone off, he might have procced his shield. Yeah, so Furious Pursuit does increase the attack of your air forces units, so that's why Serval plus Selena does really increase your max damage there in the back 2 rows. Okay, it does increase your regular attack damage by a lot, but the reason why the max laser did so much there was because it's almost like a 1.5 attack buffer heroes there. One final thing I think I've seen some people mention is the indestructible buff, and could you use Shinji, for example, with Prime? What would happen if you did that? So he has indestructible, and so does Prime. If we look at the details, it does say that the stronger effect will be effective. So Prime's is higher than Shinji's, so our expectation is that Prime's indestructible would trigger, Shinji's would not. What that would mean is you wouldn't get it in the second round either, because Prime's wears off. And I'm imagining the way they've coded it is that this indestructible just doesn't occur at all, even in the second round. So you can't use it for 2 rounds. If you have Shinji and Prime, you still get the both best effects. But what we'll do now very quickly is we'll test that. So if we go into my radar and find something to attack. We'll pad both of our heroes here, Shinji and Prime, and we'll just shove one unit in the back row. And when we look at the report, what we should be able to see is how this works. So here we go. So straight away at the beginning of the battle, the only thing it shows you is Prime coming up, which implies that we don't get the benefit from Shinji. But this is round one. Now all of the enemy planes are going to fire. As soon as that finishes, we should see Prime pop up on the screen, take away our Indestructible buff, and there's no Shinji buff in round two again. So now we take full damage from the planes. So overall, how do we feel about Shinji? Well, I think he's pretty good. He's worse than Prime at defending in the first round. So if you always lose in the first round on air versus air, or against army with your air, for example, he's not going to help because he's going to take even more damage in the first round. But if you start surviving into that second round, especially now with the heavy troopers that are coming out, that's when his strike ability with his missiles and the Indestructible lasting another round is really going to start helping you push ahead in the battle. For me, I'm just good enough, I think, for that to be the case. But more importantly, it now allows me to move my Prime across to army as well. So now we actually have Indestructible bonuses on all of our army types. We have Prime on the army, we have Ikari on the navy, and we have Shinji now on our air, which gives us a bit more durability in fighting. I hope that helped go through Shinji and the different benefits and the disadvantages of having him. I think his level 7 ability looks extremely strong because he does 70% more damage with his missiles and fires one more. So if you were to unlock level 7, the damage output from him would dramatically increase. But that's also the case with some other heroes like Megatron as well, and the more recent heroes, Ikari. Should you get him is going to be completely up to how you currently do in your battle situations. Do you last until round 2 normally, or do you find yourself dying before round 2 starts most of the time? You can use him on any march. So now, unlike Prime, which actually has some benefits to using him on army, a universal march could now look something like Selena, Max, and Shinji for all 3 types. As long as you have a high fire rate of 10 component for all of your different troops, that is a very strong universal march, which could just be left at home for defending through all of the different types during, say, an SVS. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, hope it was useful. If you have any feedback you'd like to give, please let me know down in the comment section. Take care.